Well, Toby, thank you for being here with us tonight. 4 years ago in a galaxy far, far away, Tom and I came up with this podcast. We found COVID to be a really trying time, as many educators did. We felt our sparks starting to dwindle. So we sit down once a week and we get to talk to some absolutely amazing educators, including yourself. For our listeners who don't have the privilege of knowing who you are, could you give us a little bit of an elevator pitch? Who are you? Where are you from? And what's your role in education?
Well, great. Hey, thank you. My name is Toby Price. I was in education for over 20 years. Most recently, a lot of folks know when they see me out, they say, "Ain't you that principal that got fired for reading that butt book?" Like, yes, I was the guy that read I Need a New Butt and was, without employment for some time because of it. But I taught fourth grade. I taught first grade my first year. I was terrible at it. I'm surprised I survived. I taught fifth grade for several years, all boys in a special program. It was amazing. Had a great time. Was a principal in an upper elementary. Was a principal at a K2, well, pre-K through 2. It's a wild, wonderful job, and I'm really, privileged that I got to do it. Currently, I am now a stay-at-home dad / trophy husband, author, illustrator of the Almost True Adventures of Titus the Monkey.
Hey, tell us about this book. I loved it. I got it. I read it. It's absolutely incredible. Tell us about the genesis. Where did it come from? Tell us about the characters and give us the lowdown on this. It's awesome stuff.
I'll give you the true story about Titus is this. Anytime anything would go bad in our house, we blame it on the monkey that just showed up. And people were like, "You have a monkey?" And I'm like, "Yeah, y'all, it's really weird, okay? The windows are open here a lot. It's hot. The monkey just shows up. He's good with the kids. And, it's really hard to find a babysitter when you have kids with autism. So if you found someone that's good with the kids, you just let him hang out." and that's where Titus kind of came from. In all honesty, too, he was talked about in a restaurant that I worked in Ohio. There was a young man there. Him and his we used to joke that him and his girlfriend would raise these monkeys to go and steal sack lunches off of school playgrounds. And when we moved back from Ohio, Titus came with us. We didn't even know he was there. And since he's so good with the kids, we let him hang out. And he's learned a lot about the kids, and he's learned a lot about, the us. And in this story, that's the funny thing. And I try and tell folks, Almost True Adventures, almost everything in this story really did happen. Any autism parent knows, you're going to run into somebody in the store who's going to give you so much unsolicited parenting advice. It happens more often than it should. Someone opened up somebody's dish soap and it started leaking all over the store. That happened too. My son did that. My son did that to somebody else's cart. And we didn't even realize afterwards when it happened. We started walking around looking like it looks like Predator. There's like green soap or blood on the floor. Like, what's happening? Then we realized that the person we had an encounter with a few minutes ago, while we were having said encounter, just like in the story, Titus or someone walked over and opened up the soap. And almost everything that's in that book has happened, to the point where my car keys in the toilet, the slushies, we know the Circle K folks by name. They know us by name. Oh, man. And that's the thing. Everything that's happened in these stories, we try to, it's true. The singing, my kids just hates it when people sing. My kids hate it when someone nearby is singing. They'll cover their ears and yell. But again, we made a story where I hope it's, a lot of fun and it's kind of silly. They climb things all the time. My oldest, we had to get her off the roof more times than I could count. She was 4 years old, not as high as this table the first time we looked and what's happening? She was on the roof. Yeah. All the things like that happened. So we wanted to try to teach people about autism without just kind of laying on a sappy, thick, syrupy message.
Well, I love that. You talked about bringing fun and humor into reading, and I think that that's a really big part of helping kids feel connected with stories. How have you seen that play out when you were in the classroom with kids?
The kids always go to the stuff that'll make them laugh. I've always referred to those kind of books as those books they're the sweets, they're the sweets. And like when you were feeding, like when my wife taught me how to feed the kids when we were little, we always gave them the vegetables first, because if you gave them the sweets first, they wouldn't eat the vegetables.
Yeah.
So when you're feeding kids, you give them the vegetables first. Well, it's different with books. You have to give them the sweets first, so they'll go back and metaphorically read the vegetables later on. When I was younger, I didn't want to read anything in school. Man, nothing. I couldn't connect to anybody better than like Peter Parker or Captain America or any of one of the X-Men. Those were the things that I connected to and related to. Peter was a nerd. I was a nerd. Peter loved a hot chick. I probably had a crush on a hot chick. He could stick the walls. I wanted to stick the walls. I couldn't stick the walls, but I could relate to those things, and those are the ones that I read. And luckily for me, my parents recognized that early on and would go buy me the comics. It took me a while as a grown up, but I transitioned to the other stuff. I wanted to read, more things. It took me a while.
It happens though.
I still go to the comic book store. Yeah, I still go to the comic book store, but it took me a while. But if you find the books that they can connect with, and you show them how to connect to those things, you can convince them to want to read it. I had 5th grade boys for 4 years, and I was always tell them, like, you know what, I can get you excited about reading. And before we're all said and done, I'm even going to prove it to you by, you're going to love a book series called The Sisters Grimm. Have you ever heard of The Sisters Grimm?
No.
Y'all ever heard of it? Oh my gosh, they're so good. But I feel like, if you get the right book, even though the main characters are girls, they're still going to love The Sisters Grimm because it's just that engaging.
Yeah.
The Scarlet Hand showed up on my board one afternoon. Once you read the books and you'll see that there was a painted Scarlet Hand with the paint running down the board, you'll see why they were like, oh yeah, they love it. They get into it. The same thing with like the Series of Unfortunate Events. Those were some of my favorites when I first started teaching. They'd go out to like break or music or recess, and they came back in one day, and all of their homework assignment that I handed out before we left, it was all destroyed and burnt in a pile in the middle of the room. And Lemony Snicket gave them an assignment to do that night instead. You bring it to life that way, and you can do it. They're lifelong readers that way. But you got to find the right books.
Yeah, I wonder what it is. Like, I don't know if it's education pressure or if it's just needing to meet standards, or I wonder where that comes from, right? Because like developmentally, we should be able to allow children and people to read what they find interesting, and I don't know where that turns off. It's really unfortunate.
I think it's the pressure with the assessments, to show that they're learning something. We forget to, I guess, model or role model the joy in reading.
Yeah.
Because when I was a kid and I started reading, I didn't keep a reading log of my books. I just liked reading. Like when I first got terminated for reading I Need a New Butt, one of my friends who was a teacher, he came to me and he said, "Look, I went and took certain books off my bookshelf. I took Walter the Farting Dog home because I just don't know."
Right.
And you see folks start censoring themselves because they're not sure and they're so worried about whether or not they're going to reach their test scores. I think when you take that authenticity and that love of it out of it, it makes it even harder for kids to connect with those books.
My oldest son, who he's now reading to enjoy, not just sounding out in phonics and everything, but he's picking up books like Dogman and Captain Underpants. And thankfully, he hasn't had a teacher that takes that away from him in the classroom, because that's what he connects with. And if I want him to continue to grow as a reader, he's got to find enjoyment in it, or he just won't do it.
I can go anywhere in any classroom and say, why don't you like to read? And they'll all say at the same time, say, it's boring.
Yeah.
I was like, I thought it was boring too, but when I was younger, it wasn't that it was boring. It's just that I wasn't that good at it and needed to practice. But when I went to practice at school, I didn't like the way they were practicing. I didn't like those stories. I didn't like those books. I had to find stuff to practice with that was fun, that helped me practice. And the more I did it, the better I got at it. And I loved it the more I did it,
You're so right. I think love of reading and having fun and enjoyment, but then also like the authentic learning experiences. And I love what you did in your classroom, whether it's the Scarlet Hand or it's a little fire with Lemony Snicket's like note there, like just to make it even more authentic and real and get their imaginations engaged. I think we miss out on that sometimes. Yeah, we can give them books to read, but are we really making the reading experience authentic?
One of the bright spots that came out of getting terminated, they say teachers always plant seeds and they never get to see the tree grow. Well, when I was terminated, I got some glimpses of what grew that I never would have known about before. Because I had some of my 5th grade boys they would email me or they would post stuff online. Like, one of them even posted, just when the world seems like there's a horrible and vile place, there's more good in it than bad. Mm-hmm. And what may seem like a series of unfortunate events may be the first steps in a journey. They were quoting that back to me. That stuff will stick with them, and it'll come back, in the right ways. Mm-hmm. It's just, exposing them to it in a fun, passionate way.
I liked listening to your story on how you felt about reading as a kid, because that's the same experience that I had. I did not like reading until maybe 10 years ago. And honestly, I didn't like the way that I was as a reading teacher until I read the book Whisperer. And in it,
great book.
Yes, and just how she talks about the importance of letting kids choose their books. And I was like, oh my God, this is what I missed as a kid, is that I wasn't able to pick up books that I like.
I think that the trap that so many of us fall into, you talk about the book Whisperer, y'all should check out, if you haven't already, Read Aside by Kelly Gallagher. That's one of my favorites. Like, my daughter, she had what she's reading on a 7th grade reading level. Okay, but she's 8. Okay, she may be reading on a 7th grade level, but she really wants to find out what happens to Judy Moody and his little brother in that graphic novel, Right. You got to let them, just because they can, doesn't mean they should be forced to read just at that level.
Mm-hmm. You have 3 children, 2 have autism. It's life goes on, life happens, life is an adventure, and you just kind of have to roll with it. How do we get our students to understand that life is that way, and you have to roll with it, no matter who's in our class, no matter who's in our learning community, no matter who has differences or likes or dislikes.
And I try to tell folks this, like, and with my thing, with kids with special needs, okay, they need to be in the regular ed classroom more. And it's not just for them to be in the regular ed classroom, it's for the kids who are in that regular ed room to experience people who are different and to know that they, they're not, Lord, my shirt, there you go, they're not less, they're just different.
Yeah.
They're just different. So they need those authentic experiences. Even when, and this is what I used to tell people about, like, my son and my daughter especially, if they come in the room and it doesn't work and it just sucked, guess what? That still can be a positive thing for everybody. Because they got to see that, even though Toby went into the room and he had a meltdown, he was there for a little while, we're all good. I was able to help him, or his teacher came and helped him and had him take a break out in the hall, but we can all still keep going because it's okay. And that happens to people like that. And, I tell folks all the time, my son may he may have a meltdown where he starts hitting his head like this, but there's somebody in the back of the room who's feeling as anxious as he is, but they're just peeling their fingernails or taking the eraser off their pencil. Even when you think, like, oh no, this was a total train wreck, you can learn from the train wrecks.
Yeah.
You can learn from the train wrecks. And even with taking my kids out in public and going to different places and different things, like them, I would want to go to the same places and do the same things because it's safe.
Yeah.
But get them out there and try to go and do those other things may fail 150 times. Or you may get to a point where you can take all 3 of them on a Saturday morning to see Guardians of the Galaxy 2 in the movie theater by yourself, because we practiced and we had so many not great at times in the movies, but eventually we got something really beneficial from all of those things. But it had to be authentic, and if we can still have those and have teachers not worry about the fact that they came in my room today and it was a mess. Well, it wasn't a mess. It was an attempt. You made the effort, because sometimes that's all you can do is try. You make the effort.
We have a student who has autism at our school, and last year when he was in 2nd grade, he's in the same grade as my son. I bring my dog to school with me, and during my play period, I would go and I would hang out with him and read with him. I ended up loving this kid. He's just totally awesome. And Jackson, my son this year, is in class with him. And listening to Jackson talk about him has just been such a blessing, because he sees him as the awesome person that he is. I would feel like Jackson's getting a disservice if he didn't get those experiences. This week.
And the kids, in my experience, kids get it a lot more than we give them credit for. Yeah. Because in my upcoming book, Me Because of 3, brought to you by Codebreaker EDU, we'll tell you a story about how My wife was substituting one day, and she had my son in her class come out with the regular kids that she was. And lo and behold, she looks over there, and there's McKay going to the bathroom on part of the playground. Now, it turns out he was peeing on an anthill, which is, hey, it is what it is. But two of the boys came over, and they said, Miss Price, it's okay. He obviously had to go. And I peed on an anthill the other day. It's hilarious, okay, because the ants don't know what to do. And I'm like, they get it. They get it more than you think they do. But it also goes back to the person that's with them that's leading the classroom. So if somebody comes out there and has a meltdown or something like that happens, they'll look right to you, and they'll see how are you going to react? How does your face react? I tell people all the time, your minions, they're always watching.
Oh, man.
If you respond in a positive way, if you're just like, oh, they're going to get that attitude too. But if you're just like, oh, well, come on, let's go. And it's, they always watch.
I think what you just said there is one of the most underappreciated points in education. The kids in your classroom are always looking to you. If there's an emergency, if somebody is out of control, even in the calmness of a classroom, they look to you to see how do you handle your calmness, or if something goes wrong, how do you handle that anxiety or worry or stress. They're always watching, and modeling is the biggest way you can reach students, I think. I love that you said that, Toby. That's so powerful.
You can go into your classroom or go into your office and turn off a light and cry and put your head down on your desk for a few minutes when no one's around. Right. That's okay. Been there, done that too many times. But, when they're watching, man, you just got to do it.
I think it's a good reminder, too, that we should always be modeling to our students. I know that Tom talks about it a lot, but just having conversations of what you're feeling out loud for kids to hear. Because then it teaches them how to regulate emotions, how to handle big feelings.
And I think it goes back to that, like an authenticity thing. They know that you're, well, hey, why are you upset? Well, my son's having a hard time. Or my daughter's going to have surgery on her tonsils even. I mean,
Toby, I've loved talking to you. I've loved reading your book, and thank you for having the courage to talk about everything and share your book and your adventures and your journeys through this. At the end of our podcasts, our interviews, we always ask, what does the world need now? And it can be in the world of education. It could be just the world in general. But what does the world need now, Toby?
Well, the world needs to order more copies of the second book of Titus the Monkey. But most importantly, I think the world needs to laugh a little bit more, and the world needs a little more empathy. And those are two things, teachers know you can pull those from books in a heartbeat, but everybody needs to laugh a little bit more. A day without laughter is a day wasted. Yeah. And empathy is just the ability to, someone else is feeling bad. I understand how they feel. Kids need to see us laugh at work and having fun at work.
Man, I just told my class last week, they're like, why'd you become a teacher? And I was like, have you seen what I get to do all day? I get to hang out with you guys. I get to play at recess. I get to go to gym. I get to love every minute of being here.
The empathy. Empathy is important, and just, enjoying what you do. That's a big deal. Just staying grateful. And, you got to be grateful for the good things, the bad things. It's hard. Life is hard. That's why you got to read the funny books. You got to read a funny book. And if you haven't read this one yet, The Fish Mailbox is real. It's still in our neighborhood, down the street, a couple houses. They're wonderful people that live there. I love them. I don't know about the mailbox, but I love the people that live there. They're wonderful.
Thank you so much, Toby. This has been awesome.
No, thank you. I've really enjoyed it. I appreciate, the opportunity, and it's nice just to get to meet y'all.